Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tower of Babble podcast. As always, I'm Julian Mush. I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza and Jeremy Kozier.
Hello.
And there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes annoyances right now to get this stuff going, to get this podcast off the ground. And Dan mentioned right before we started that this is a delicate balance. So hopefully this goes well. Last week we had our last big episode, had some audio issues. I'm hoping that that won't continue. So I apologize for all that. We are continuing to go live. That's the promise that we made, when we launched the Patreon. So that's still going to be something we're committing to. And you can find us live on YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope / Twitter video. Okay. This week's episode is actually quite exciting. So if you get past all that stuff, there's lots to do. So we are talking about Mortal Kombat. There's a new trailer that's finally dropped. There's the Snyder cut for Justice League trailer that's dropped as well. There is a Scorsese, rant that we can play.
Lovely.
Do you disagree or do you not disagree? We're still workshopping the title on that. And the biggest news, the Daft Punk is split up. So we're going to talk about that in depth at the end of the show. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But there is a story about that I'll mention in a little bit later. Okay. Before we get into everything, I just mentioned follow us on Twitter at TowerBabblecast, Facebook.com/TowerBabblecast, and head over to our website, TowerBabble.ca, to find everything that we do. Okay. No, there's Patreon too. I should mention the Patreon. I did. Patreon.com/TowerBabblecast is where you're going to find our bonus content. We're doing film clubs monthly right now with the Patreon. Dan, what is the upcoming movie for the month of March?
So the theme we went with was Mars in honor of the Perseverance landing, and the movie we're watching is called Mission to Mars.
That's right.
It's one of two sort of competing Red Planet movies that came out around the same time.
Yeah, and I think mostly Dan tried to squeeze in a second movie. So there is technically a bonus second movie that if you want to watch, we're going to touch on a little bit.
So.
Yeah, right. Okay. So I was the only one who was against it, just because I didn't want to change the precedent, But then what's the other movie that people?
The other one's just called The Red Planet.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like they came out, if not the same year, then in close succession.
Right.
But they were produced around the same time.
Okay. What else? Oh, what movie did we watch for February?
The Royal Tenenbaums.
And that was a good movie.
We all ended up enjoying it.
Yeah. I posted a mea culpa on Facebook, admitting that I was wrong about the movie, as well as promoting the podcast episode. And I was called out by a couple of friends for they really liked the movie, obviously, and they're happy that I was able to admit that I was wrong. So there you go. Okay, so let's get into the real meat of the matter here. And we got Sean Tennyson in the chat on YouTube, friend of the show. Always love having you in, Sean. Again, join in on the podcast live on Twitch, YouTube, and Periscope. And Sean's mentioning, why didn't we choose to do Mars Attacks?
There's a whole pantheon. There's plenty of great Mars movies, and that is one of them as well. I don't know. Mars Attacks is a great movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's
I was terrified of it.
than the other two.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Right.
Yes, it's a different tone, very tongue in cheek.
I got to say, I have to apologize for the live audio listeners that Jeremy's audio is going to be a little bit distorted for this episode, but it should be fine for the recorded version. So you can always tune back in for that if that's annoying you.
So
and it'll come and go.
Don't listen to this and just.
No. We're working through technical difficulties. We're working off of a laptop. So.
Great movie, yeah. I know. I'll stand by it.
Do Mars Attacks? No, absolutely not. So Marcos is also joining us live. He's on Twitch,
of course.
Obviously, friend of the show. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the show. All right, there's lots to touch on. So let's start with trailers like we typically do, and we'll start with Mortal Kombat because I know this is one that's been that you guys have been waiting for a long time. We were kind of teased with those still images a couple weeks ago, and we're a little disappointed, but. Now we've got the full trailer, so I'm just going to shut up, and I'll let Jeremy and Dan go at it because, I'll just give my initial impressions. I really like the trailer. I think it's really cool. It does have that air of cheesiness that I think
a little bit,
that it kind of needs.
Sure, yeah.
Like when someone says, it's a birthmark, and someone says, "What is it?"
It's a birthmark that just looks exactly
Right.
like this dragon.
And then the reaction is he was born with it. Is I think one of the funniest things I've ever heard, but it doesn't matter because this movie's clearly over the top, insane. That kind of sizzle reel at the end of the fatalities is obviously really exciting. But I think it's, for me, I'm just most glad that it's kept that air of cheesiness that I think really keeps the movie from getting too self-serious,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, a great trailer. I think it got the tone perfectly right. You mentioned the cheesiness. That is part of the tone, I think.
Yeah.
That is part of it to a small degree, but it also has, the extreme violence mixed with this mysticism and mystery element. It's not giving too much away in terms of story. There is a new character, Cole, who's not a part of the video games ever. But it could be he could be a character from the video games just under a different name. It's hard to say at this point.
Huh.
Yeah, I think that might be most likely. But initially, what they're saying is that he just serves as a guide for the audience to be
audience surrogate.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Which is fair. You kind of need that in one of these movies. It just seems like with the quote unquote birthmark thing, he has some sort of lineage that's tied to either Scorpion or Sub-Zero.
So they didn't want to follow the same path of the original movie because the audience surrogate, quote unquote, in the original movie was, you could argue, was either Johnny Cage or
Luke Kang. Really.
Or Luke Kang. It's mostly Luke Kang because he's the main guy, the main character, basically. But they're basically saying those characters are going to be here. Although, is Luke Kang in this movie? Yeah. Okay.
Did you not watch the trailer?
I mean, I just there's so many characters flying at you. There's a lot happening. So they're just going a different route that way. Does that concern you? I guess everyone's thinking that you guys are saying that it's an existing character. Who would it be?
Well, okay, so the character is Cole. He's going to be the protagonist of the movie. But what I mentioned with the dragon tattoo, that not tattoo, birthmark.
Right.
That means to me that he has. Yes, he was born with it. The first thing I thought was that he was the second Sub-Zero. He was the younger brother,
right?
Kuai Liang, right? Because it seems like this Sub-Zero in this trailer is the evil first Sub-Zero.
Yeah, Bihan.
Yeah. But it also seems like he could be a reborn Scorpion, like Scorpion's spirit in his body, sort of thing.
That might be more likely, in my opinion, just based on what they show us in the trailer. Right? There's that one sequence where he's looking into the mirror.
You guys all came to this conclusion. I clearly did watch. I watched a different trailer. I guess I don't know.
There's that one sequence where he looks into the mirror and he has a quick flash of the Scorpion in this movie. And also the actor who's playing Scorpion is a bit older, so I can see maybe that correlation there being a newer version of him. Mm-hmm. Also with Sub-Zero right here, clearly being Bihan and the main villain, which is very cool because obviously we know there's a second Sub-Zero, which I feel is likely to come in the sequel if there is to be one. Not trying to get ahead of myself here, but I just feel like this trailer really takes the storyline serious, the characters serious, and their kind of lineage and timeline. And I'm just so excited. I think it was a great trailer.
I like the looks of it. That was what jumped out at me. Great, looks very good. The visuals are good. Marcos brings up the shot of Goro. That one might be from a CG standpoint the most questionable, but
yeah, I think that's what most people are saying is the CG is a little bit questionable here with the effects. But I like how they're really going in with the kind of the magic, whatever you want to call it, with even the human characters, including Liu Kang, or Earth characters. There's a quick shot of Sonya, I think, even using her pink blasters, which is part of her moveset in the games.
Shot.
Right.
Sorry, the what?
The ring shot is what it's called in the games. It's like a fireball, but it's in a pink ring.
Huh. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and in that quick sequence where it's like a fatality sequence, it looks like she's literally killing Melina there. But
yeah, but that looks like that every time there's a fatality. So
right, and I love the beginning of the trailer too. Just kind of straight up spoiler, just showing how Jax loses his arms and utilizing Sub-Zero, which isn't necessarily part of the canon of the games, but I think the director mentioned in some interviews that they felt they could play with that a little bit, right, and utilize Sub-Zero if he is going to be the main villain here. That it's pretty effective in that way. Yeah, go ahead.
They talk about the tournament. Is the tournament gonna? You think the sequel is the tournament?
No, it seems like the characters in this movie are going to the tournament. They've all sort of
Right.
Right.
It looks
gotten
like
together.
Kano here is going to be a part of the main group.
Okay.
I
Even
don't
though
know.
obviously
That was weird in the trailer. That was a weird sequence because it does kind of it goes Liu Kang and then it introduces Kano right away as though he was one of the heroes. But
well,
also when they're walking,
it shows them all together, right? So
Well, they're
I
part of
guess
the
in
human.
this
but he's not there
iteration,
though. It
in
doesn't make
this
sense for Kano to be
iteration,
one of the heroes. But whatever.
yeah, I think it just looks like they're gonna be working all together, and
There'll
I
probably be a
bet
switch.
eventually
Yeah.
he'll switch and come be a part of Shang Tsung's.
He's literally
army.
holding a human heart at the end of this.
No,
this
no,
trailer.
I don't know if it's literally a human heart because also in that fatality little montage, the thing that he's fighting is like some sort of werewolf. Like, it
Okay,
has,
so
like,
it's not a
dog
human
head.
heart,
Yeah,
maybe.
well,
but
some
there's
people
a
are also
heart.
saying that it could be reptile, which I'm a little bit disappointed with in terms of just my just being a fan favorite of reptile.
Yeah.
And if that were to be him, right, it's just a very awkward looking.
You do see in the trailer there's one point where I'm assuming it's reptile. You see some sort of creature that was in camouflage on the rafters and shit.
Right. It's a very quick shot there.
So that would be keeping with the heritage of the Mortal Kombat movies, right?
Of like reptile
Having-
being
Yeah, well,
relegated.
Yeah, and being a weird design.
I think even the director himself, like he's not like saying it's a sequel to the original, but he's very much like influenced by it and extrapolating some of the things that worked with it, which I definitely kind of see here. But I think the music here too, like really does a lot of lifting here in this trailer. It's very epic, and then it slowly or it gradually transitions into a bit of the original movie theme song, which everyone knows. So
Right.
glad they were able to include that because even the game, I think with Mortal Kombat 9 or 10 or X or whatever, they included that song in their trailer. So
It was a remix by Skrillex, actually. How dare you?
no, that was a reptile
That was
song.
that was 9.
Right.
Okay,
Sorry.
9.
Sorry. Still my favorite Skrillex song though, the Reptile theme. It's pretty good. What was I gonna say? It's exciting. I think just generally having another Mortal Kombat movie in development, we're close to its release. I mean, the biggest disappointment here, I think, that it won't be released in theaters, so we're not really going to get a true gauge of how successful this movie really is. And I'll be talking about the story later on about how we're losing the ability to know what's successful or not in the TV side, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But this is going to be streaming to HBO Max. Along with all the other movies that are coming out by Warner Brothers this year. And, I mean, for better or for worse, so we'll definitely get to see it no matter what, which is great, but, I think we would have liked to have seen this movie in the theater. Speaking of movies we would like to have seen in a theater, or would like to see in a theater, we did actually technically see a version of this movie in the theater, which is Zack Snyder's Justice League. And we have a new trailer for that movie, in fact, 2, technically. And I think we'll just get into all things Snyder Cut, and we'll loop back around to the rest of the movie stories as we go here. Jeremy, your initial thoughts on the official trailer?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teases and just a long time coming here, and then with Valentine's Day, the official trailer, right? So we get a taste of the official score and the tone and kind of the story elements and how it's going to be put together. So for me, just very exciting to see just how the tone plays together with the story elements. And it just the feeling is just drastically different. Especially once Bruce Wayne, like Ben Affleck's Batman's, like talking about building the team together. To me, it's just like I said, vastly different. I'm curious to see your guys' take, even if you maybe don't remember or if you've watched the original or the theatrical release at least. I just think that just super excited and I just can't wait. Like for me, once that trailer hit, it was like, how am I supposed to wait this many days now to see it? Essentially,
that's funny. I mean, I think it's a really good trailer. Just from talking about how just trailers are different. They're just so different than they used to be, right? They're longer generally. They've kind of got we just refined the art of trailer making, and this one is pretty good. I think it's a little bloated in terms of trailers if we're just judging it on that stuff alone. How good of a trailer is it? I think it's good, but not great. it's not Wonder Woman 1984 level trailer, in my opinion. That's a great trailer. This is a good trailer. But
that movie, to be fair, that movie ended up sucking.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But I mean, we know a lot about this movie in some sense, right? We've already had footage given to us in black and white in some cases, and we've seen bits and pieces here and there. There's lots of news about the Snyder Cut. So there, I guess, Jeremy, how much new footage is in this? I mean, it seems like there's a decent amount, but it seems like there's a lot of stuff we might have already seen already as well.
I mean, from my perspective, I feel like the goal of this trailer wasn't necessarily to throw new footage necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just to really showcase what his intent was, including some of the footage we've already seen, but just displayed differently.
Mm-hmm.
In this overall package of this 4-hour epic where he showcases Darkseid and a very different look at Steppenwolf and kind of what they're all about, and with Bruce and putting this team together. So I think the tone itself just that alone just shows kind of what you're in for here, and just knowing that it's 4 hours and
right.
Rated R as well. Yeah,
that's a good point.
It's just so exciting to me. It's just yeah, like there's like what else would you want to do on that day? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like for me, I'm struggling because I feel like I'm already in. Like I don't need much more. I don't need a trailer at this point. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's just like I don't know what this trailer was supposed to do for me other than give me a date, and it did, which is great. But there's not a lot new here in terms of outside of the stuff we've already seen, like I said, to really get me super excited. Other than what I really liked was the Mother Box Origins like mini trailer.
That was a newer thing that premiered, I guess, yesterday with the IGN Fan Fest thing. Right.
And it's just a CG trailer, and it's kind of it's very reminiscent of Watchmen in a lot of ways.
Very much, yeah. Like the Bob Dylan opening, right?
Yeah, it's like very similar to that, right?
It works.
I mean, he's got a style, and that's fine. I think I like it because it's not more the same stuff we've seen. Like it's something new here. It's very stylistic, which I think we all agree that Snyder's really good at being. It's not providing any new information, but that's okay. It doesn't.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think even like I watched it live, like when they introduced this thing,
right.
And basically he said he just thought it would be a very fun thing for the fans to kind of go over and comb through and eventually find Easter eggs here and there. And I already see that online in terms of the people I follow on Twitter, coming up with just some of the similarities he's trying to invoke here. With some of the godlike characters that we know of.
Yeah, that struck me.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the kind of like the legendary status of the characters. I mean, the etched in stone kind of look, almost like a Greek gods.
Well, it's more the Christ imagery, right?
Right.
Like they're all like crucified essentially on a cross. They're all spread eagle like that.
Well, Batman is kind of tied up to a.
He's tied to a. I like that one the most actually. He's kind of like tied with barbed wire onto a pillar of Gotham.
Yeah, it's actually a string of pearls. Someone I saw on Twitter kind of discovered that. Yeah.
Wait, the barbed wire is a string of pearls?
Yeah, it's just like a bunch of pearls kind of shackling him to the thing there.
Yeah, because that's what's holding him back.
Right.
For sure.
I know it's cool.
Yeah, I mean they're both cool. Like for me, I agree with you, Julian. Neither one of these is going to do anything in terms of my excitement level for Justice League. I'm already in. And I really don't think we can expect a lot of new footage or anything from them because ultimately this movie is a lot of stuff we've already seen and only a little bit of new stuff, right? Not a little bit. It's 4 hours, but still, they're not gonna show too much of the new. They're not gonna show too much of the new stuff within the trailer.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right?
Yeah, and I was actually kind of happy about that, but I'm still curious, just in terms of what you know of Justice League, what you've seen this going in a different direction, the feel, all that, like was that?
I think you're right, Jeremy. I think I gotta watch the theatrical one again before this. Like
no, that's not.
Don't do that. You to watch it again after.
No.
Afterwards.
He's been saying this for episodes.
Yeah.
I haven't been listening.
That's like I'll die on that hill. The logic there it just doesn't. It's just not there.
Watch Batman vs Superman. The director's cut first.
There's a lot of misconception with this movie and a lot going on with it. There's a new article by Vanity Fair that really clears up a lot of it, and it really showcases what what he did accomplish before he eventually left. So essentially, he filmed everything we're going to see. He filmed back in 2016. There's roughly 4 minutes of new footage, and part of that is the Jared Leto Joker in the nightmare sequence, where he felt would be a nice kind of resolution or just ode to the fans to see the Ben Affleck Batman kind of interact with Jared Leto Joker. So, and then I think maybe a hero appearance towards the end, but again, just 4 minutes was all that was kind of reshot in 2020, leading up to 2021 when he was finishing up the editing. So again, a lot of misconception around this whole thing. We've had our disagreements or our opinions and whatnot, but the Vanity Fair article, I don't know if any of you two have seen it, but
I was going to reference it. The one, the takeaway that I saw was that according to Variety, there was a Warner Brother executive that came out and said that, quote, nobody wanted to admit what a piece of shit, quote unquote, unquote, sorry, Joss Whedon's Justice League was.
Right.
You know, to me, that's like, it's like how convenient for you to say that now.
It's easy to pile
you know,
on now.
exactly. So I feel like that. I don't love that tact coming out of Warner Brothers. It feels very. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think that's
weaselly.
I don't know if
Opportunistic.
tact is the right word there, because it is an article,
Sure.
doing its own research and interviewing certain key people, and then kind of saving all that for this moment in time now. So for me, in my perspective, it's just shedding light on the entire situation if people aren't aware of it. And through the investigative journalism, through that, right, they found that one person who remains to be anonymous said that. And
well, yeah, because
when I hear that, it's like, for me, seeing that theatrical version, a few times, knowing kind of the Frankenstein version that is, to me, it just makes total sense that someone would think that of that version. Because we talk about like it's like, I don't know if you guys remember that movie, but like it is terrible. Like, so
that's
I think it's just right in line with what they decided to do with what they had. It's just crap. Like,
I mean, I guess you're thinking about it. I mean, I'm again giving it a little bit more thought. There is some honesty to it, because we talk about this all the time. Like, do studios know that they've got a piece of shit on their hands? Like, when like they have to know, right? But they'll never say it. They'll all be like, we believe in our creative our creators and yada yada
because
yada. But then we'll still release their movie in February.
Yeah. That was during a time when the studio got cold feet and seeing what Marvel was doing. And again, we've been over that. I don't want to rehash it, but also in the article, it showcases a sequence where Christopher Nolan and Deborah Snyder, who's also a producer but also wife to Zack Snyder, they went and saw the theatrical version, and it shows a sequence or tells of an event in the article where, once they saw it, like, they told Zach, like, even Christopher Nolan told Zach, like, you can't watch this. Like, it'll break your heart, essentially. And that's why he's never seen it. Famously, as he kind of, people always ask him, have you seen it? And he has it. And that's why the black and white version exists as well. So go ahead.
He's never seen the original.
He's never seen the theatrical.
I don't know. It's I mean,
no, that's coming. That's straight from him. That's
but now he must have now.
No, he hasn't. No,
how are you going to re-edit the movie if he's never seen the theatrical?
Why would he watch Joss Whedon's version of his shot footage?
If this has been a thing for a while that I'm not aware of, let's not rehash it. But that sounds insane to me.
That's Daniel. You have to read the article. That's exactly what happened. They took his footage, changed his movie based on what they wanted, their strategy in terms of comparing to Marvel, and just they didn't use him anymore. Like, they just, like, you're done.
Sure.
So when his wife and Christopher Nolan, part of the executive team, right, watched it, they told him, like, you can't, like, don't ever watch it. Like, you can't. It's a massacre, essentially. So he ended up seeing a glimpse of a trailer. He said in an interview a few days ago of the promotional material for his movie, but the theatrical version, and he couldn't believe the color and the kind of what they did to it. Right. And that's why he said when he went back to his house, he stripped it to black and white. He did it so he could, like, kind of be okay, is what he said. It did something to him, seeing his shot footage being manipulated, essentially.
A little
He
bit
also
of this sounds
he also
it's a little
said
melodramatic.
he also said that he wouldn't ever utilize, like, people think that, oh yeah, it's Warner Brothers' attempt to like use him and like take what Joss Whedon did and like make the best version. It's like, no, he said he wouldn't use a single shot that wasn't filmed by him. He would rather blow it up than make something that's made by a committee or whatever.
Right. And again,
which is essentially what happened to him.
There's a little melodrama there. I mean, it's like, you know,
more than a little.
The by the way, the Justice's Gray edition is the name of the black and white.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
I think, yeah, I'm very excited for that. Actually, I think it's going to fit very well.
Do you? I was thinking about this. Like, I know that there was a lot of materials in black and white, and I'm not surprised that there's a black and white edition that's going to be available.
Well, again,
no date on it.
He did it because he saw the promotional material, like, just kind of accidentally.
Yeah, but is that a good reason to release a black and white version? I mean, I don't know. That's
well, he said while he was editing it, because some of the effects were unfinished while he was doing that version, and he says himself, his version of the idealistic version of Justice League is this black and white version, but he's also happy to have it in color as well if people want that, and that's evidently going to be the main version.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think comic books evoke bright colors, and the colorist is a whole, like, that's a whole important part, I think, of comics, and I think bright colors is specifically in relation to Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and the Flash, like, that's important. So I think the black and white version it feels more like a novelty to me than something that's like a definitive version of the movie.
Yeah, to me, I
the
think
black and chrome version.
I think what it does is kind of strip away certain elements that allow you to kind of see the imagery like extremely consistent. Especially how he composes shots and the lighting. I just think it's going to be a kind of a beautiful take, witnessing it that way. I don't think it's anything other than that. I just think, based off what he said, he just, he stripped it down and he thought it looked cool. And I think it's a cool idea that, we have this option to see it that way.
Yeah. I think for me, just as a final note on this, I don't know if there's anything else we want to touch on except for apparently there's going to be a cameo at the end of the movie, which is quote unquote going to blow the minds of hardcore fans. I don't, it's likely Green. My guess is Green Lantern, but I mean,
it's gotta be, right?
I don't know who else it would be that would be like mind blowing.
Well, I mean, it could be.
Who knows?
It could be.
He said. I think they're real. Right. Well, I think with Martian
Manhunter is
Martian Manhunter is kind of already kind of known, just in terms of some of the storyboards that have leaked, or even the actor himself talking about how he's going to be that character. But who really? He says. I think the real quote is hardcore fans. So, like, who knows, right? Like, we had in the trailer, we have a glimpse of Darkseid and Desaad and Granny Goodness. Right. Like, we talk about Apocalypse or the New Gods. Like, who knows? Like, something like that could appear. We also know this movie's going to end on a massive cliffhanger, which is the original, which was the original idea in terms of the Justice League 2, which was already signed on for and eventually going to go to. And some of the rumors are reporting that version could also be heavily in the Nightmare timeline,
right?
Which is very unique. But yeah, that's obviously a conversation for another day. But something that people are talking about, right? Are you going to do another one? Is another one going to happen? But like I've always said at the beginning, we have to just kind of wait till we see how this one plays out. But nonetheless, super excited to finally get this iteration. And if this is the end, then it's kind of that the Zack Snyder trilogy from Man of Steel, BVS Ultimate Edition, and then this one. So, just very excited to see it.
Okay, I mean, again, my final kind of thought on this is, I think best case scenario, this is, it comes out something similar to what the Watchmen director's cut, Ultimate Edition, whatever it's called, is, which is really good, but ultimately very long, and
which is also the only way to watch that movie.
Sure, but it's not perfect. I honestly think, based on all the baggage that this is bringing into it, this brings a lot of baggage, right? That's the best case scenario. And if that's the best case, then it's probably going to have It's going to be very popular with a small group.
So your prediction, you're in the black book. What are you saying exactly? Your best case scenario?
I don't know. I mean, like it's hard to define that, but I mean, for me,
I just want to write it down now so we can reference it.
Well, again, it's subjective, but I think for
well, you're bold enough to state. Even from you're bold enough to state something right now. So what exactly?
No, like I said, I think it'll be good.
It'll be good.
It'll be good and stylistic. Okay. I never said it was going to be bad, Jeremy. I think you can go back and say I never said it was going to be bad, but right. it'll be as good. I think the best case scenario, as good as the Watchmen director's cut, which is not a perfect movie, and I'm not, and I think that's fairly generous. I don't know. I think I said that's the best case scenario. I think here,
right?
In worst case,
for me,
it brings in a lot of that baggage and it doesn't shed it.
For me, I'm just kind of a part of that camp where, like, maybe these type of things will age better with time, or, when you talk about Christopher Nolan, how he says that Zack Snyder's kind of ahead of his time, and even you said that in terms of the Watchmen itself when it came out, how it was perceived, all those type of things.
Yeah.
But for this kind of this Justice League series that he pitched, and was on the heels of the Dark Knight trilogy and the tone that set, and how Christopher Nolan was kind of overseeing how Warner Brothers and DC would move forward. To me, I'm just excited that we get to see this dark tone version with these nightmare sequences. And there's just one tweet I just wanted to say, or reference, in terms of that kind of before its time type mentality, is just some random guy talking about this movie. He says, if you would have told me in 2008 that the next time we saw Batman and Joker on screen together would be in an alternate future timeline where half the Justice League died while Darkseid conquered Earth after weaponizing Superman with the anti-life equation, I'd have bitch slapped you. So who for me, I want to it's just a random guy kind of,
right.
Talking about the series itself. So I kind of fall into that camp where there's just so much criticism over every aspect of this series, and also in comparison to the MCU and what they've done. And to me, I'm just part of this mindset of just excitement and gratefulness to have a version of this take place.
Sure.
Even correlating back to your article in the early days of our podcast, in terms of it's okay to have different takes and tones, and I'm just really on that whole approach, and glad to see this come to fruition, and excited to see what comes on the other side of it. So that's just been my whole mindset of this whole thing, and not necessarily moving on, or it needs to be better, it needs to be perfect. So yeah, I just wanted to say my piece there.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, and I think that's probably the best way to approach it. In a lot of ways, the marketing and the press around this movie kind of invites a lot of criticism in some ways, just by the nature of it having lingered this long. The movie itself, I think we can all agree. I mean, we're all excited to see a version of this Justice League movie that is more true to what Zack Snyder wanted, right? For better or for worse, whatever that means, right? But the part of our discussions over this whole thing have been partially, I think, maybe clouded, obfuscated by the kind of the zeitgeist that is generated by everything around this movie. It's like it's really hard to miss. If you're on Twitter, it touches almost every part of Twitter. It's crazy. So that can sometimes get in the way, and it's probably gotten stuck in my craw at some points.
Yeah, that's fair.
But ultimately, being able to see the movie in a different version, in this version, is going to be what is going to be exciting. We're going to talk about it we're going to give it its fair shake. We're going to look at it in and of itself and talk about that. But then, there's going to be talk around what the movie is outside of that too, and I'm also interested in what that's going to be. Speaking of which, by the way, what did you guys make of the Joker line at the end? So that generated a lot of buzz. This idea that he said we live in a society, which I think is obviously a callback to like the movie Joker, right? I don't think you put that into a stinger in a movie, post that movie, and without knowing what that's doing.
Yeah, I mean, like when I first heard it, like I laughed out loud. Like it worked on me, right? We're talking about the Joker, and I think for a lot of people who are online and are acting pissed about this, or they're upset about it, like I just feel like it's Zach's way of showing some social commentary on some sequences that he of including Jared Leto's Joker, who he pitched to and he agreed to, and Ben Affleck came back to reshoot this sequence. It's some social commentary with the lines following right where honor is a distant memory. And if you read the article and you really look into this whole thing, like it really shows you why he's saying that. Like with the people involved and at the company Warner Brothers, like it's a major like event in cinematic history. So I think that's all it really is. So to me, I just laughed at it. Like I just thought it was like such a funny thing that the Joker would say. But I understand how it looks like it's trying to be serious or whatever. But I think that's not the point. I think it is just some sort of social commentary there. And then you get the image as well, a little like a week later of the Joker, right, wearing the crown or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of stems from there are rumors that Batman is actually seeking the Joker's help in the Nightmare timeline to defeat Darkseid. So if that's true, it kind of correlates to Joker, kind of seeing himself as the savior to a certain degree and being over the top and having that kind of visual reference of him being a savior. So,
sure, I mean, and Zack Snyder's never been afraid to use Christ imagery. Obviously,
well, yeah, he's doing it more and he's doing it more and more now in the reels leading up because he knows how much it's stirring up the internet. Essentially,
well, and that's
I just see
like
those troll movements.
And that's really the thing. It's like is like, do we want Zack Snyder trolling fans? It's like or even dissenters? Do we want?
Well, I don't think
that's healthy or good.
I don't think he's trolling the fans. I think he's just trolling the opposite side. Right?
I think I don't like. He always talks about how he doesn't see it that way, and all this stuff. But like, I don't think it's a healthy move.
He has
for Zack Snyder to do
the recent moves. He has condoned the toxicity. He says that's essentially a part of any.
Wait, he condoned he
condemned it. No,
condemned it. Oh, okay. That would be crazy if he. Okay.
No. That obviously didn't happen. He just obviously talks very highly of the positives of the movement, right? In terms of the suicide prevention awareness and raising $500,000 and all those types of things. So, but people ask him about the toxicity, and he says, "Yeah, like no." He's like, "Don't give any energy towards that. Those are just byproducts of any kind of online movement." Which
how can he say? I mean, again, the toxicity. He's talking about the toxic his fans. But like, it's just crazy to me. It's crazy to be like, don't give any energy to that, but at the same time, also.
You can't control. Well, you can't control it. Those people are on their own doing what they do.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, you're right.
Yeah, like there's no way to spin this to where he's encouraging or he's a part of it.
No. I not. That's not what I'm saying. It just seems like he's just not helping himself when he does stuff like that, and that kind of does kind of bug me. I think so.
I feel like you both have tried to apply your final thoughts to this a couple times.
Yeah, we have, and we failed at.
I hate the politics.
It just can't. It just can't come to a resolution. I guess
it's so hard. It's so hard to escape. That's maybe why I get so annoyed.
Well, I think you touched on a point before where you said you kind of get caught up in the internet zeitgeist. I think. And I've said that to you already, that I feel like you're a part of that and also that narrative. And every time we talk about it, yeah, we both are. But I mean, pointing out that he's fitting that role and I'm fitting that role is what I mean.
Right.
It just keeps continuing essentially, even with new information or But on my side of things, I just feel like you even with that article, it's like you haven't read it yet. It's like, well, why haven't you? Like, you can get all your information there on people's motives and whatnot. Yeah.
I don't like when we talk about movies and I feel like I have to pick a side. Like this thing has become much more political than it needed to be, and I don't personally have a lot of interest in talking about the drama behind the scenes of like different groups of fans competing to get a certain message across. I don't like that movement sort of aspect to this. I am excited to see the movie.
Yeah, that's easily the worst part of it.
For me.
Yeah, that's easily the worst part of it, but it always gets brought up in terms of whichever side you're trying to build your argument or case over, right?
Well, I guess
which is something I've always tried to defend, that whatever the attack is it's never that was never the intention, or it's always just I realized through research that it's just been spun differently to create that narrative and those responses.
Yeah, I just don't understand how you can, you can say out of one side of your mouth, I'm going to, condemn this, but then also, and the worst part of this whole thing is the political side of it, and then also release, a clip from a trailer that is going to incite, that political side. It's like, that's frustrating to me, and that's coming from Zach. So again, I don't want to rehash that, but that frustrates me when we're trying to avoid it, and it's like, man, oof. All right,
yeah,
Sean's on your side, Dan.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's tough for me to understand like how you'd be frustrated like over. It's just like a trailer where the Joker says something, and it's like, what are you trying to
be upset about?
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. It's like, what are you trying to extrapolate that makes you frustrated that the director decided to do something?
But the director knew that, but he knew he was going to incite that reaction. That's why he did it. He
included the Joker into the movie because he knew the fans deserved the inclusion of the Joker.
I don't know. There's just a lot of ways to spin. I guess there's a lot of ways to spin things either way. Like, but I always tend to err on the side of, these creators know what the reaction. Pretty sure what they know what the reactions are going to be for these things before they release them.
Well, they don't know what the reaction is going to be, but they know what the reaction they're looking for is.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe putting that in the trailer like that is fishing for a certain type of reaction. I really don't know. Yeah. It's hard to guess at that point.
Yeah. We have lots to cover, so let's move on.
Please, for the love of God.
Okay. Let's move on. So after some fun, this is fun, Dan. Okay.
Sure.
After some fun social media stuff, with fake names for Spider-Man 3 floating around the internet for a couple days. I don't know if you saw these. Home Wrecker, Phone Home was one of them. Home Slice was another one.
Home Slice is funny.
And there was they had the official title treatment and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, it was a lot of just viral marketing, fun stuff, whatever. And though it felt a little, forced, still came off as again, being fun. So there was a short official video released by the Marvel YouTube channel that featured Tom Holland and his co-stars that revealed the official title of the movie.
Okay.
And the official title is No Way Home for Spider-Man 3. A couple other news bits about Spider-Man 3 specifically, that it's going to be scored by... Where did I put this? I don't know where I lost it. Danny Elfman, I believe. It's going to be scored by Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman is the composer who did the other Spider-Man movies. He did 1, 2, and he was supposed to do 3, but there was a falling out with Sam Raimi, and he ended up not doing 3. And sorry, I wrote that here. So Danny Elfman scored films, and then Christopher Young stepped in for the third movie. And then so Michael Giacchino scored 1 and 2 of the Home series movies of Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And I think a very good score. He's the one that did that violin kind of version of the traditional, the classic Spider-Man theme, the dun 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 dun, so that's exciting. I guess a couple things I want to mention here, just on the score itself. I think it's cool to kind of bring back Danny Elfman for this. I think it lends a lot of credence to a lot of the rumors around the different Spider-Men appearing in this movie. And then also there's a bit of a tradition now of the 2 first Spider-Man movies in a trilogy being scored by one person, and then someone else coming in to score the third.
Did you look up what happened with the Amazing one in between?
Oh, well, there was no third Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, didn't make it that far.
Right? So, unless there was in my mind, and it just erased from my memory, but I don't think there was. So anyway, that's interesting. The other thing that jumps out at me is that No Way Home is very dark of a title,
especially in a movie where we're presuming you're talking about a multiverse of different homes, traveling to different universes and such.
Jeremy, what did you think of the title, or how it was revealed?
I mean, it was cute, I guess, how it was revealed, right? I think Tom Holland and Zendaya and some other characters tweeted random, fake names. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess we obviously knew it would have the word home in it, so yeah, makes sense. I mean, I don't know how we. It's kind
of funny. Do you think when they made the title Spider-Man: Homecoming, they thought that was going to be it was going to be now all the movies have to have home in the title?
I don't think
You
so.
know?
I think once they knew that the sequel was going to be away from home, quote unquote, they just saw
Right.
that and just went with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, the third one does now have to have home.
Right.
And then you're backed into a corner.
So I don't know. I mean, yeah, like Dan mentioned, there's just so many question marks when you talk about this multiverse scenario. It really seems like it sounds like it's like a goodbye. No Way Home sounds like the kind of like, hey, we'll see you later. It's the end, you know. So that
third in a trilogy. I mean, that does make sense.
Yeah, but I mean, we've had certain characters in the MCU who've had trilogies. They didn't die at the end of their, or disappear at the end of their third movie. You know, that would certainly be different. I think if it is going to go the way we think, with Sony kind of reclaiming Spider-Man's rights and kind of taking Tom Holland, and you gotta have to feel bad for the guy and having to go make kind of like this weird Venom spinoff or whatever the heck he's gonna have to make.
Sure. He'll be fine.
Yeah, who knows? And we
Do
still don't even know.
Do we have any information about his? Or are we talking about Uncharted at all in this podcast today?
We have. I mean, is there new information on Uncharted? If there is, I missed.
What I seen was that he had a quote, Tom Holland, of how he was asked about his approach on Uncharted and how he said it may have been a bit of a mistake. His approach that he took, yeah. Oh no!
Oh no, Jeremy!
So it seems if that's correct, if that's if that's not a lie or whatever, it's looking like he's trying to get ahead of it, of the eventual release.
Well, I mean, we don't. That movie's not even going to be out of. I mean, he's getting really far ahead of it. Yeah. I don't think that movie even has a release date yet. If it does, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But like,
I'm just saying, I did see that quote from him. I'm assuming that's legit. So
I don't know. That's funny. I mean, that reminds me a lot of like the Jake Skywalker stuff from Last Jedi, and like until we see the movie, it's hard to.
Or the Fantastic Four, Josh Trank.
Oh, right.
Stuff.
Man,
right? Like
the Josh Trank stuff is crazy because he kind of dug his own grave with that one a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Tom Holland is very hot right now. He's kind of like. He's Hansel very much, and he's in a new movie by the Russo brothers that's I think dropping on Disney Plus or on Apple TV Plus in the next couple weeks. So he's been in the press a lot, and what I like about this whole Spider-Man story is that they made fun of the fact that Tom Holland is like notoriously bad at keeping secrets, and they're like So the video starts with him leaving the director's office, and he's like complaining to his co-stars. He's like, "They gave me a fake name again." He's like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, isn't it obvious?" It's like because he can't keep a secret.
Yeah, but that's all just an act now.
At this point,
that all stemmed from the very first incident to where maybe he made a mistake.
No,
but then,
he revealed twice. He had
two
mistakes.
I could I could see that the second one was just a part of this whole. It's a whole thing.
I don't know. It wasn't far long enough. Now
this one is clearly now it is, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on. So, Edgar Wright, everyone likes Edgar Wright here, I think, is making a new version of The Running Man based on the novel by Stephen King. And this is going to be much closer to the novel than the original 80s film. I didn't realize I didn't realize the book was a Stephen King book. He was written under a pseudonym. So which is actually, I feel like changes things a little bit.
You thought someone in the 80s just came up with that brilliant idea and made a movie?
Well, I don't know. I don't know a lot about Running Man, to be honest.
Have you seen Running Man?
I don't think so.
Oh my goodness!
You should watch it. It's
I don't think so. So give me the Coles notes. What's Running Man? Why should we be excited about Edgar Wright?
Well, it takes place in the distant future, and
not too distant future.
Not too distant, I guess, right? And
is it seriously near future?
No, people always say in the not too distant future.
Right.
Not too distant future, right? And essentially, this reality TV show is the ultimate reality TV show that just kind of, is the number one thing to tune into. That
so it's
people
like
bet
Gamer.
on. Yeah, and the game show is obviously high stakes, right? With life or death, and the people who play in the game show are like inmates, convicts.
So it's exactly like Gamer in the sense that Gamer came later.
One came first.
Right. But I'm trying to relate it to things I understand, and I'm thinking of the Gerard Butler vehicle. Gamer.
I mean, I think this one's better than that movie. I mean, clearly, it's where it's like
bold statement.
This game. Well, I mean, clearly, I mean, this one's still we're still being talked about. And it's so old,
right?
with this elaborate game show and the game show host, the actor himself, like it's all part of the aura of this movie.
Right.
So yeah, definitely recommend watching that movie.
Well, I mean, anything that Edgar Wright's making, I'm in for. Basically, at this point, I mean, we know he's making a Baby Driver 2.
We know he was fired off of Ant-Man.
We know he was fired off of Ant-Man. I still would love to have seen what his version of Ant-Man would have been. That would have been really cool. So I'm in for this. Edgar Wright's Gamer, I'm in.
I mean, I do like the idea of like a modern take on it. I guess Gamer is relatively modern, but with nowadays with the TikToks and whatnot, like some
the
new
Clubhouse
new age
TikToks,
version
right,
of that
was.
same story. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Kumquats.
Didn't say that.
I honestly think the word kumquat is one of the funniest words in the English
hilarious
language.
word.
Family show here. Let's go.
Yeah, well, it's a fruit. I mean, a vegetable / fruit. I don't know. Anyway, speaking of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson reaffirmed. We mentioned it earlier. We mentioned it a little bit earlier.
Speaking of The Last Jedi.
Speaking of it, I just want to move on. Rian Johnson has reaffirmed, that his Star Wars trilogy is still happening.
Fuck yeah.
In a recent interview. Though
fuck,
he admits
fuck
there's
Daniel,
still no...
fuck yeah.
Specifically Dan, really upset with him. So yeah, he's reaffirmed that it's still happening in a recent interview, and he was actually really open. He talked really dove in depth and gave a lot of background about stuff he did with Last Jedi and how he feels about Star Wars.
I'm convinced Daniel, when he watched the movie, was just like kind of sleepy. Is how I kind of see it, because I think he tried to give a lot of credit to the the latest one. What's the last one? The Rise of Skywalker. He tried to say that was a good one, and I just think he was.
I don't think I ever.
Dan would never say that.
No, he did.
Terrible. No one's ever said that.
I remember when we were recording the review of it. He did. He
roll
was very.
Back the tape.
He was very confused on whether he liked that one more than The Last Jedi, and right then and there, I knew that he just wasn't paying attention during that specific period of time when he was watching.
I would like to say that I gave them each a fair shake. I gave them each the same amount of attention and energy, and they're, for my money, equally bad. If I was saying that
equally bad. Oh my
that's okay, Dan. Let's not get carried away.
That
was the dilemma when we were reviewing episode 9. That was my dilemma. I couldn't say which was better or worse because they're both that bad.
Right. Okay, sorry.
He's doubling down. He's doubling down.
Put words in my mouth here.
Sean says that I was right. Thank you. No one has ever said that Rise of Skywalker is good. It is a bad movie.
Yes.
Actually, no, that there's one person I follow on Twitter. I follow him specifically because his whole thing is like examining Rise of Skywalker for how good it is.
That's all like, ploy.
It's so funny to me.
There's always going to be one of those.
And I'm like, and he's just so, he's like, I understand everyone hates it. I really do, but like I really love this movie. It's my favorite Star Wars movie, and he talks about it lovingly. I don't know. Yeah. He's certainly convincing. I don't. He hasn't convinced me yet.
To each his own. I mean,
and I don't know. Anyway, I without getting into the politics of this stuff again, I won't. But I'm excited about this trilogy. No, I think it's funny. No, it's just funny to me that like it would just. I just think it's funny. That meme, how these people. I can't even. I won't do it. I'm not going to do it. It's just crazy. There's just so much. It's crazy to me that people are still so riled up about The Last Jedi so many years later. It's crazy.
We have one among us
shit all the time.
He's not though.
Riled up. This is what I'm talking about with the politics though. Like a guy like Rian Johnson makes a movie, and yes, it's controversial. I didn't like the movie, but we can move on.
Right.
But then like people who do like the movie. And I was happy to move on. Like I don't like talking about that movie.
Right.
But he was happy to move on to Rise of Skywalker.
You guys
soak that one in.
Like,
I'm sorry.
This is what I'm saying. Like the political analogy works. So you guys, Rian Johnson makes a movie that you like, and you're saying three more movies.
Well, no. His movie.
No, we didn't say that. The people at Star Wars said that.
Saying that the whole time.
No. He was hired to do that. We were like, yeah, that makes sense.
It was announced shortly after the release of Rise of Skywalker or of Last Jedi that he agreed to do a trilogy.
Yeah, I know.
So I mean, I don't know. I mean, yes, there's a lot of bickering back and forth. It to me, it's the biggest blight on the Star Wars like name right now is this like division about The Last Jedi. It's really annoying.
That's where the term
I can't wait till those movies come
out.
out.
Basically,
I mean, it certainly brought it to my attention. You know, when all this happened, and
it's genuinely like made me less interested in Star Wars.
Yeah, it has. If it wasn't for the Mandalorian,
Yeah,
I would
and then
be
when those
very,
movies come
very
out,
feeling differently.
when those movies come out, I can't wait to hear Dan's response. Like,
I think I can't wait to hear everybody's response if those movies ever.
Because I know
I'm
where
skeptical,
it's heading towards and like how it needs to be maintained, but then I'm just genuinely curious once those are revealed and what they encompass, how it can keep that argument going. That's
like honestly,
what argument though?
Jeremy?
Like, he could make a trilogy of
That he
movies
doesn't
that can be good
understand
movies, and it
Star
doesn't
Wars
make
or
Episode
whatever.
8 better.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think for me, when we talk about like the Snyder cut and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I wish we could have had the Snyder cut for the episode for episode 9, you know, like just like a rewrite of that movie. That would make me a lot happier. But I mean, that's not happening. I'm not even asking for that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like,
there's no movement behind that one.
Yeah, because it doesn't exist. I mean, whatever. But so we did get a special teaser of the Golden Globes. Golden Globes are on right now. We'll talk about them next episode. But I just want to let you guys know, Marcos was kind enough to provide us with an update on one of the big winners. Jason Sudeikis, big win for Jason Sudeikis. One for Ted Lasso. Great. So I think we can all agree to it. I presume he was nominated for Best Lead Actor in a TV comedy. Yeah, exactly. Jinx.
Nice.
Yes.
And then Sean asked me, is The Last Jedi still my favorite? I mean, I did a podcast with
Jedi could mean Return of the Jedi too.
He says Last Jedi.
Last Jedi.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I did a podcast with Rachel, who is our co-host for Small Screen Star Wars, and we talk about Clone Wars and we talk about Star Wars on the small screen, obviously. And we did a bonus episode where we did our best performance by male actor, best performance by female actor, all this stuff. Basically, the Oscars for Star Wars stuff. It was quite a fun, and obviously, best picture is your favorite Star Wars movie. Mm-hmm. I did pick Last Jedi for my favorite Star Wars movie, nice. And it has not been dethroned yet because we've only had one shitty movie since. So, actually, no, that's not true. We also had Solo since then, right? That came out after Last Jedi, I believe. Yeah, a couple months after.
Did
so. Yeah, it did. Remember, that was the whole thing. It came out too close to Last Jedi. People were upset about that.
Crazy.
Right, I know.
If you would have asked me, I would have said for sure it came out before.
No, it was after, and it was. I think people can say that it was like it was a victim of some of that kind of toxicity at the time. People were really upset about Last Jedi, and they didn't go out to see Solo. Anyway, let's move on from stuff that is polarizing to. Back to the DCEU, but not about Snyder Cut. This is good news. There's a Supergirl. She's been cast. She's been cast. It's an actress you may not be aware of, but she's from The Young and the Restless, daytime Emmy nominee. Crazy that show's still on the air. To be honest. It actually is flabbergasting to me when I read
what
that.
What season do you think it's on right now?
It's 108, I presume. Like, it has to be
50s or 60s, I believe.
It's crazy to me. Like, I know that what's it called? Supernatural was on television for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it was
like 10 seasons.
Yeah, but The Young and the Restless. This is a show that's been on. Like, might be one of the first shows I've ever heard of. Anyway, so. Sasha Calais is her name. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I hope so. And she was kind of picked. The quote here, the line here is, "The Flash director Andy Muschietti watched all the auditions, and I hear, along with DC Films boss Walter Hamada and the producers, was blown away by the actress's toughness and vulnerability that she brought to the role, and that they used a similar process to how they found Gal Gadot for Wonder Woman to find her. There was something like 425 actresses who auditioned for the role, and she'll make her debut in the Flash movie as well. So that's really cool. Thoughts on bringing Supergirl into the DCEU, Dan?
Well, it's about time. I don't know if that's fair because it's just kind of getting started. It feels like DC has been rebooted a few times, so I shouldn't. It feels like it's been around for a long time, but in terms of the narrative of the current DCU, it's relatively early days.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on, there's the whole Superman reboot news that we're going to talk about later on too.
Yeah.
Right? How it all fits in together. But yeah, I'm all for it.
And then there's also important to note here that she's the first Latina Supergirl. Generally, I think. I don't know if I think that's just in DC, just full period on the page, and then also on film. So that's cool. Jeremy, what do you think of the new Supergirl?
Yeah, I think it's super cool. I think the story here
Sorry,
is just
Supergirl actually is the name.
it's just super cool how the news is broke, right? Because
Right.
it's literally the director, on Skype teasing the actress, right? Like, saying, "Hey, like, can you fly?" and all this stuff, and then whipping out the costume itself, and then seeing the reaction, right, when she learns that she's going to be Supergirl in this new Flash movie. So
Right.
that's the story here. It's just, what a cool way to introduce it. What a cool way to see it. Get on her side of things, her perspective. Right, she cries, she's breaking down. I just think it's a wonderful way to roll out that news, which we rarely see. Things like that. It's always just like announced or whatever, tweeted. But to see the video, to see her reaction, pretty special.
I mean, it's a pretty big break for an actress from a daytime soap opera, right? I mean, it's a big jump. I think what stands out to me is the phrase here that they liked her toughness and vulnerability. I think that's kind of defining of the character herself. So that's exciting. Didn't expect to have Supergirl in the Flash movie, to be honest.
Hey man, it's a multiverse.
Michael Keaton, Batman's going to be in there, so
that's a good point. I mean, at this point, anything can happen.
It's the DC's version of Tom Holland's Spider-Man 3, right? Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
That's what's happening right now. So
that's been in development since.
Ben Affleck's going to be in it. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, and that movie's filming now, I guess.
Which one?
Flash.
I think they just started. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so staying in the DCEU for a little bit here, they have hired, DC has hired acclaimed essayist and novelist, I'm going to butcher this name, Ta-Nehisi Coates, I think. Maybe I did a pretty good job on that. Okay, to pen the script for a feature reboot of Superman that will be produced by J.J. Abrams, and this is coming from the Hollywood Reporter, quote, to be invited into the DC Extended Universe by Warner Brothers, DC Films, and Bad Robot is an honor, said Coates in a statement to Shadow and Act, a website dedicated to the African-American diaspora in the arts. Quote, I look forward to meaningfully adding to the legacy of America's most iconic mythic hero, unquote. According to sources, the project is being set up as a Black Superman story. This is something that the studio has been trying to wrap its head around for months, if not a year or two. Michael B. Jordan tried to develop a Black Superman project when he first arrived at the studio with his deal in 2019, but that did not get very far at the time, according to sources. It's possible the studio could return to him to star down the line. This is really interesting. I've heard a couple people talking about this. I've only heard little tidbits here and there. Obviously, we're only at the writing stage, so there's really nothing, of substance to really sink your teeth into. But I really, the more I think about it, I really love the idea of examining Superman through the Black lens, when you can look at Superman in this way that he uses his white privilege. Like, he is very privileged by being a alien who lands on planet Earth who looks exactly like a white man.
Yeah.
Like, that's very fortunate for him. And then he uses that in for good, right? But imagine if it didn't go that way. Right? He didn't land, and he didn't look like a white human man. He looked like a black man. How would that change things? I think that's so fascinating.
And now's the right time. I mean, this is hot topic stuff, or hot button issues, right?
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Yeah. That's a great idea.
And I think,
and something that's cool and unique to DC. Well, they've been struggling to find their voice and to find their niche in this in the market, right? This absolutely, if it's done right, could be that foothold that they need.
And there's precedent in the comics for a Black Superman. Like, it's certainly nothing new. So I'm really, to me, this is just all great news. And I think so far it's avoided a lot of that really annoying dialogue around, like, casting different characters of different color. It annoys me, and I just don't think it's warranted here. So I'm glad I haven't seen a lot of that. And I'm really excited about this story. Jeremy, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same boat as you guys, all for it, obviously. And obviously, we've heard reports before with Michael B. Jordan, like years ago, we discussed. Apparently, he pitched his take and all that stuff. But with the multiverse, potentially coming to fruition with Walter Hamada at the forefront, and then the Flashpoint movie, including all these characters and actors, including Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck coming back. I think it's a perfect opportunity to change things up and invoke a different type of DC. And on the same part, we can maybe have multiple Superman, just like we have multiple Batman. In terms of Robert Pattinson and Ben Affleck, potentially he could be done, obviously, but
Michael Keaton, too.
Michael Keaton
he's coming back, right? Yeah.
So and even with J.J. Abrams, we've talked about him for a while now. I think the whole rumor was with him and making a Justice League Dark adaptation, and also Superman was also talked about with his name. So there's also been rumors of whether or not he's going to start with a new Superman or have Henry Cavill Superman. So I think with this talk of a black Superman and all that stuff, I think it's just exciting to have all these possibilities and iterations. So I just think it's super exciting and can't wait, basically.
Marcos is asking, so if it's not Michael B. Jordan, who would do it? Do they want, a well-known actor, or is there a more low-key actor you would go with? I think for this, you're better off going with someone a little less well-known for this role. I think that helps.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's up to, I think it's going to be up to Abrams, right? If he's helming this project.
Executive producing.
Yeah.
He's executive producing, right? So he's likely not to be directed by him, which, for my money, I don't know if we need necessarily much more JJ movies out right now. It's fine.
To me, I read it like he might be directing, but because we don't have any inclination to think what other director would do it, right? Like, I feel like Warner Brothers, because they bought his studio or whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
So I'd imagine they want his skill set here in rebooting, essentially, right? Like their flagship character.
He is. I mean, that's arguably what he's best at, right? JJ?
Except for with the last Star Wars.
Oh well. I disagree. I think, speaking of which, I'm just going to start playing Superman Returns in the background so people can watch that.
You can disagree, but I from what we've seen on the internet, like, it just seems like it was a movie that was constructed with not just him at the forefront,
right.
Like essentially by committee.
Well, I think there was a lot of problems with the sequel trilogy that we don't need to rehash here. JJ just happened to be a face of a lot of that stuff. That being said, I mean, again, JJ's. I don't think you helm a black Superman movie with one of the most iconic white directors of all time. I think you probably look to find a black director for this. You're gonna get a black writer. You're gonna cast a black Superman. I think you get a black director. I think that's to me that just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and likewise with the actor being a relatively less known actor, I think part of the whole idea behind this movement is providing people with opportunities where historically they haven't had them. So if that is part of the goal, I think you do it all the way, or you don't do it at all.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Okay, let's get on to something that I like to call agree or disagree. The music's still being workshopped. Okay.
You have to workshop a new joke for the top of that segment.
No, it's the longer I use it, the better it gets. Actually, this is coming from Insider. I'm just the article that I'm reading from, but this is actually larger than that. Sorry, Sean is asking a question. I understand that this is a random question, and no one needs to stop the episode for this. It's too late, Sean. I'm fully committed. But wanting to ask for a while, are you ever gonna do a breakdown for Game of Thrones season 3?
It's the only one that's missing.
No. Half of it's there. Half it's there. I only asked because your breakdowns is what made me a fan in the first place. But please do carry on with the show. Thanks, Sean. Don't worry. Happy to interrupt the show right before we start into agree or disagree, because this is a perfect time to answer this question. We haven't discussed it, but it's something we haven't discussed it recently.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think we'd be open to, maybe leading into the prequel series that's coming.
I would like to at least have a complete run of if you were a fan of the Game of Thrones breakdowns, you could in theory go all through.
That'd be so hard. But how do you divorce your knowledge of the future from your recaps of season 3?
No. It would be like what we did with 1 and 2. It would be from the perspective of we've seen everything.
Yeah, but when we did 1 and 2, we hadn't seen everything.
That's not true.
the final season hadn't come out by the time we did 1 and 2.
Anyways, we can discuss it off air, but it's potentially.
Yeah, and there's actually news that let me find it here, that Game of Thrones spin-off House of Dragon will begin filming in April. So it'll likely be out in 2022, if I had to guess, depending on how much post-production stuff they need to do. Late 2022, maybe early 2023 at the latest. So there's lots of time, is what I'm saying. And who knows, there could be, that animated stuff comes in before then. There's lots of stuff that could happen that we could spin off to do it. But I think we need something to help bolster that, help us get a little excited. And Marco says the final season doesn't exist. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the final episode doesn't exist. I don't know.
There's a handful of episodes that shouldn't exist.
Maybe. Okay, so let's get into this agree or disagree segment here. This is interesting. I think. Let's see what you guys think.
Looks like a lot.
So this is via Insider. Okay, Oscar-winning director Martin Scorsese has denounced the modern movie business, including streamers, in a new essay on Italian filmmaker Federico Fellini, published Tuesday in Harper's Magazine. Okay, so this quote is coming from Harper's Magazine in an essay written by Scorsese. In the lengthy essay titled Il Maestro, Scorsese details his personal love of Fellini's films La Strada and 8.5, and uses the director's expansive filmography to explain the ways in which he believes large corporations and streaming sites are devaluing the cinematic art form. By the way, they mentioned this intro to the actual quote itself uses the term streamers. This is something I've seen now quite a bit in kind of this, like, the access press, which is this shorthand for, like, the streaming services, calling them streamers. I'm not sure if I love it. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna let it, like, sit with me a little while and see how I really
better than
digest
streaming
it.
service, though. To say that all the time is
right. So streamers it is. Besides, I don't think I get really a say in whether or not it takes off. Okay. So here's the quote. There is a little bit. Bear with me, please. Okay. And I'm channeling my inner Scorsese here. Okay. The art of cinema is being systemically devalued, sidelined, demeaned, and reduced to its lowest common denominator: content. Systematically, by the way, not systemically. My apologies. As recently as 15 years ago, the term content was heard only when people were discussing the cinema on a serious level, and it was contrasted with and measured against form. Then gradually, it was used more and more by the people who took over media companies, most of whom knew nothing about the history of the art form, or even cared enough to think that they should. Content became a business term for all moving images: a David Lean movie, a cat video, a Super Bowl commercial, a superhero sequel, a serious episode. It was linked, of course, not to the theatrical experience, but to home viewing on the streaming platforms that have come to overtake the movie-going experience, just as Amazon overtook physical stores. On the one hand, this has been good for filmmakers, myself included. On the other hand, because, I mean, obviously, again, this is me interjecting here, he obviously has benefited from the system.
Sure.
Right? His last movie was a Netflix movie, right? So we'll get to that. Okay. On the other hand, it has created a situation in which everything is presented to the viewer on a level playing field, which sounds democratic but isn't. If further viewing is quote-unquote suggested by algorithms based on what you've already seen, and the suggestions are based only on subject matter or genre, then what does that do to the art of cinema? Curating isn't undemocratic or elitist, a term that is now used so often that it's become meaningless. It's an act of generosity. You're sharing what you love and what has inspired you. The best streaming platforms, such as the Criterion Channel and Mubi, and I don't even know what MUBI is. I assume it's called Mubi for short. I don't know. And traditional outlets such as TCM, which is the Turner Classic Movie Channel, are based on curating. They're actually curated. Algorithms, by definition, are based on calculations that treat the viewer as a consumer and nothing else. We can't depend on movie business, such as it is, to take care of cinema in the movie business, which is now the mass visual entertainment business. The emphasis always on the word business and the value is always determined by the amount of money to be made from the given property. In that sense, everything from Sunrise to La Strada to 2001 is now pretty much wrung dry and ready for the quote-unquote art film swim lane on a streaming platform, unquote.
It's a lot there. It's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot. I think if I can just kind of try to boil it down a little bit, and I think his argument is muddied here because ultimately what this comes down to is trying to divorce the business of filmmaking from the art of filmmaking, and I think that's an impossible task. It's very difficult to do.
Maybe on that scale, but
I don't. You can't make a Martin Scorsese movie without already being Martin Scorsese in some sense, right? You need to have that platform to be able to demand that the art is taken care of, right? On the other hand, I do agree with him to some sense. I know there's been a lot of pushback against the term content. I'm pretty sure this is not the first time that Scorsese himself has used that term to define his kind of the scourge that he sees as kind of modern movie business. But there's some realities to the business side of this that I think he's just kind of blistering at, and it feels more emotional than it does feel thoughtful in a lot of ways. And
probably both,
he describes like the way that algorithms are the problem here. I think he's onto something there, but I don't think he's quite grasped what the answer is necessarily, or even the full kind of nature of the problem, as it were. Like, I think he's right in the sense that, like, what does algorithmic based movie making do to the movie business? I think it's a net negative generally most of the time.
The algorithm,
but or trying to determine what movies should be made based on algorithms, regardless of the algorithm itself. But I think that's what he's trying to express, like that he's like, be worried about that, think about that as a moviegoer. But then he's also talking about like how, you know, we're not what people aren't, you know, giving enough credence to you know, Turner Classic Movies or the Criterion Channel. It's like, you know, those are available and they are a niche product ultimately. So, you know, it feels like sometimes, you know, that Scorsese is kind of fighting against a tidal wave that with a like a bucket, and he can't really do much about it. You know, that's kind of how it feels like to me sometimes, because we've certainly touched on Scorsese's rants more than enough times now to kind of get a feel for it. So ultimately, I think I kind of agree, but I disagree with kind of the way he's going about this, especially because it comes off as a little bit slimy when you're criticizing, you know, or biting the hand that feeds you, you know, in a lot of ways.
No, he could only make, like, I don't think that's a hypocrisy necessarily. Like, he could only make a statement like this having had that experience with Netflix, right? He's seen that side of things, and this is the result.
His next movie's also on Apple TV+.
Well, okay, and that's the only place to get movies produced nowadays, right? Like, he's bemoaning the fact that that's the industry as it exists today. You know, I don't think it's necessarily hypocritical, but for my opinion, yeah, I would entirely agree with him. That doesn't make it a bad thing. He is definitely a dinosaur, and this is the industry is evolving, and evolution is not intrinsically good or bad. It's just different, and he's obviously a purist, so it's gonna feel like a bad thing to him. I don't know. The thing with the content, yes, I understand. Like the algorithms dictating what type of content is produced on the streaming services, that is a slippery slope. That is a race to the bottom. Absolutely.
I think, yeah, that's the most poignant point for me in this whole thing. Jeremy, what do you think?
I think he's right. I think he is examining, you know, what is produced based off, you know, what people want in terms of content. So he's just worried about the, you know, supply and demand and what gets pushed forward, you know, into the supply for what people want. So yeah, anytime Martin Scorsese says something about the film industry, I tend to respect his point of view, and yeah, I generally don't have any problems with how he perceives things.
To push back with the supply and demand market argument, though, that what's being demanded from the streaming services is movies that are unlike what Martin Scorsese makes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to go from
at that point, it's just content. It's just content that.
Well,
that's
his argument. But he's saying that really what he's I think kind of saying here is like, I'm making art, and and by the way, I'm celebrating the art of this other director that I really like in this essay that he writes.
Sure.
Right. But content, that's not art. That's just business. You know.
Yeah, because at a certain point, right, these streaming services need to provide content that will, display an array of attraction. Mm-hmm. So I think that's essentially what he's kind of looking at, but and you think it might be a detriment towards, the naturalistic, creation of art, because it's set between these parameters that they need to fulfill and then move on to the next one, right? So I can see that kind of side of it.
It feels in some ways, it's funny because there's this argument in video games all the time about how, like, are video games art? This is something that people in video game industry struggle with all the time. There's like looking for validation in a lot of ways, I think. And I don't think that argument really actually matters, but it feels like to me, like the movie industry, which is what they always compare them to, a lot of people almost all the time. It's like, hey, did a video game make you cry or whatever? The movies or the games that are often held up as quote unquote art are often closest to movies. Things like Uncharted and Last of Us. Yeah. Right? And then when you go over to the movie side, and that's not always true, but those sort of hardly not the only examples, but those do come up often in those arguments.
They do, but the video games is our thing, not to derail too much, but it's also the games like Braid and like the platformers that are also really beautiful in terms of how they're designed. It's different. Like that's why video games as an art form is a completely different medium to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways,
but the movie side feels like it's regressing and it's moving away from the artistic side to some degree. But there's always been the business side.
I feel like there's always been people saying that, and the part of this that does ring a little bit more hypocritical to me is that what he's talking about here is commercialism in the movie industry, and that's been the case. The commercialism has been king for most of his career within the movie industry. What's changed is
his entire career in the movie industry.
I would say, maybe he started out independent stuff, like whatever. It was less commercial then for him. But he certainly benefited from that, and all that's changed here is the institution.
Right.
The commercialism hasn't changed at all.
Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So my point with the dinosaur comment is that he's just having a hard time adapting to the new world.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of this is coming from. That's why it does. It's always, I find amusing because although he's often right in a lot of ways, I don't think there's much you can do about it. And that's why it comes off, and you always hear a lot about when this stuff happens. You see the gif, the old man shouts at cloud, and it does feel a lot like Scorsese's just yelling into a cloud because he's really working hard to protect something that's like, I don't think it's going away. I think that's the
so we're able to look at it like that because we're young and we'll intake whatever he's not a part of, so we're okay with that.
What are you asking a question?
Well, it's like I don't see him as like this. He's out of touch. He's just pointing out a change in cinema history. That's all it is. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not saying that it should be the way he thinks it should be. He's just pointing out a fundamental change that is gradually happening.
Well, he's doing more than pointing it out. He's saying that it should be the opposite. He's advocating that it shouldn't be.
Well, so that'll obviously be his fight because of where he comes from and attached to film. If you look at, I seen a quote from Ben Affleck from the Hollywood Reporter talking about film. He says there'll probably be 40 movies a year that come out, mostly action, effects, tempo, sequels, and superhero. That kind of movie that you can really count on. So I just feel that Martin Scorsese is trying to talk about the holistic approach of film and what is demanded based off what came before and what people took in. And you have Ben Affleck talking now about what he sees the future of cinema and streaming and all that stuff. And he's talking about 40 movies only a year, like giant movies that are action, effects, tempo, superhero, that kind of stuff.
We already go to less movies a year.
Yeah,
we all of us combined probably go to less movies than 40 a year in the movie theater.
Yeah.
So I think that, and he's not even necessarily even talking about the theatrical experience, so that is interesting. One of the things I didn't even mention about the Snyder Cut that I wanted to ask you about, that's completely not even related to like the nature of the movie itself, but the fact that it's being presented in this IMAX format, which is essentially 4:3, essentially a box, right? And people are upset about it because they're like, well, everyone has a widescreen television now. And people were upset. It's just so crazy to me because people were upset about widescreen on their 4:3 televisions. Remember, they wanted full video because they weren't getting full value out of their screen, which at the time the argument was you're not getting the full picture when you squeeze it down to get that. And now the same argument is being presented here that, oh, no. This IMAX format, even on your home screen, is better because you're getting the full image. I disagree. I think that
how can you disagree before you
because this movie is not going to be presented in IMAX. We're not seeing it in IMAX. We're seeing it on our home screen, and
most of those TVs aren't designed to see it that way.
Yeah, none are.
Yeah, but this is still this is what's going on the internet, is the understanding of what is presented towards you. You're used to the bars on the bottom and top, right? It's more of it's a traditional image you see.
Right.
In terms of the Snyder cut, Zack Snyder, he shot in it's not 4:3, it's 1.33.1.
It's close
which
enough,
is the
Jeremy.
IMAX equivalent. So you can have this movie cropped to where it fits your screen from one end to the other, but he decided to go from top to bottom because he's talking about these larger than life characters, superheroes, great action sequences. He says the first time, it's never really been done before, is that it's the actions from top to bottom, not left to right. So that's what Zack Snyder is going for the Justice League approach, is the bigger, you kind of get the comparison between characters with the top to bottom full frame, because most movies you see are not full frame. They are widescreen where you have black on the top and the bottom. So I disagree that it's going to be detrimental to the experience. I think it's going to be a full frame picture that we're not used to as an audience seeing from end to end. But I suspect that it's not actually going to be as a harrowing, negative as you think it will be, based off of the standard that we've been developed over time.
But that's what I mean. It's that he's fighting against the standard. That's what I'm getting at. So
But again, you can have the widescreen full frame with what he shot, but now we're extending it just to have a different perspective on larger than life, top to bottom characters and action sequences.
Is the trailer shot that? That's what I mean. That's
the entire film is shot with the IMAX perspective.
Right, but he's presenting it to everybody in, and again, I'm use 4:3 for shorthand. I know it's not technically 4:3.
It's 1:3:3:1.
But it's very close to a box. It's very close to a square.
Sure. So you have slight bars on the end of your TVs rather than the top and the bottom.
Well, I don't think they're slight. I think that's what I mean. They're fairly significant. And
whether
it's a large.
What do you mean significant?
I don't want to argue about this. What I want to say is that, similar to how Scorsese is fighting kind of against the tide, right? So it seems like Snyder is, because he's releasing a movie for home viewing in a format that's not designed for home viewing, right? And he's kind of saying and you can
you're spinning it into a negative connotation. That's not true. You get full frame. The thing is, you don't understand is you get full frame image of the characters and everyone on screen. The problem is that you're having is the standard that has been set is widescreen.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Fine, but you have to come up with what you're saying now after you view the specific alteration to the standard that's set. You're deciding already that it's worse.
No, I don't, because I've seen it on the trailer.
You're deciding that it's worse
we
already.
Should have a moratorium on Snyder Cut for the rest of the episode at least.
No, but
longer.
Is that not a fair point?
I don't think it is.
To really decide which frame that a movie is presented to you.
Yeah, what Jeremy said is don't judge until you've seen it. What Julian's saying is that the choice is going to affect people.
Julian's saying is that there should be in no way ever that a film should be presented in that.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
We got to move on.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
essentially that's what you are saying.
If you're designing a movie for home release, you don't release it in that.
It wasn't
format.
designed for home release,
right? But the Snyder Cut.
But the thing is, what you're not understanding is that you will not be missing out on anything.
I know that.
Thing here.
I know that. I'm not. I was making the same argument about how back in the day people were upset about not getting their full screen on their 4:3 monitors. It was the same argument back then. I'm not saying that I'm not seeing everything. It's not what I'm saying. It's just that the format is clearly not designed for widescreen television. That's all. And then again, relating back to what Scorsese was saying here, which is that everything is made thinking about the home viewing experience first and foremost, and that's what's most important. That streaming services are what's keeping the business alive, and that we need to appease them. And then you have maybe, is diva too harsh of a term? The diva directors, kind of like Scorsese and
really.
Snyder in some cases, who are like just willing to fight against the system, and that's okay. But that doesn't always necessarily mean that the decision's right either. Just because in their perspective it's better. I'm not saying it's wrong either.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Okay, let's move on to TV. Okay, networks will stop reporting overnight rating numbers. So we've been using the the Nielsen system for decades.
Sure.
The part of the article I read here from Variety is that, and there's a really good. You read the article from Variety here; it's quite good, where they talk about how new shows are premiering to like 0.04 on the rating scale, and that used to be like if you were getting that, no one was watching your show, and you will be canceled immediately. Now, of 0.04 is like amazing, and that's like you're doing really, really well on overnight, ratings numbers. So they're essentially meaningless now. Is the argument that the studios are making and the networks are making is that they don't provide any actual insight anymore, and they're going to discontinue reporting on overnight viewing numbers, which was already kind of a weird stat anyway because it was all through the lens of Nielsen and like the Nielsen families, the people who were like agreed to be watched while watching stuff. So to me, this is kind of like I'm surprised that anyone still cared about the Nielsen numbers.
Yeah, that's the big point there.
But the other kind of piece of it is that we're moving into kind of a darker age here of television where we have no idea what's quote unquote successful from a viewership standpoint. Netflix doesn't release their numbers. Disney Plus doesn't release their numbers. No one releases their numbers. No one knows how successful anything is. Netflix could spend $1 million on a movie, it could flop, and everyone would say, they could tell us that it was amazing success and force it to be a success by sheer force of will and money. We don't know, and that's a little bit upsetting to me. And by the way, we force it to be a success. I mean, you could kind of. They can just keep things alive, whatever they choose or think is best for them, regardless of what audience are actually doing. I mean, I'm sure they're basing a lot of their decision making on viewership numbers, but we don't know that. We have to just assume that, which is kind of that's what I mean by getting into the dark ages. You guys think this is worrisome in any way?
Doesn't bother me one bit. I mean, I don't make a lot of decisions based on that type of rating system in the first place.
No.
I don't think this is going to change anything for my life, and I don't like you said, the Nielsen's is a bit archaic already.
Yeah. Jeremy, did you have? I mean, we used to talk about ratings. Do you have any fondness for the old days?
Not really. No.
Yeah.
We're not missing anything there.
Yeah. Fair enough.
mean, the idea that they keep their numbers, Netflix, Disney Plus, they keep the whatever algorithms and blah blah blah. I mean, that is all proprietary, so who cares? They do get to define their own success. They are private companies, and
sure,
like successful on the for the public is determined on like forums and like how much people are talking about a movie.
Right. I mean, like I suppose, but like there's a lot of that like what's it called when you put a bunch of people in a room and you ask them a bunch of questions about a movie. They watch a movie and you put them in a room and you ask them what's the word I'm looking for
here?
A focus group. Like. People have been making fun of focus group, movies and stuff like that for a long time, and like this idea that like, people don't necessarily know what they want and all this kind of silly stuff. But like, I just
actually, interestingly, sorry to interrupt you, but that this does tie into that agree or disagree thing,
right?
Because the Nielsen thing wasn't a perfect rating system, but that was to a degree how movie studios decided what types of movies, or television in this case, decided what types of projects to fund, to invest in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing as things, running off an algorithm. The algorithm's just a little bit more accurate, probably.
Well, maybe, but then you could also make the argument that like
and
it was
proprietary and behind closed doors. That's the problem.
But like it was also there was something to be said about like it was out in the open, right? So you could have a show that maybe they didn't know was going to be a hit, or they were like they didn't expect to be a hit. They didn't give it a lot of money, and it was like, hey, it kind of earned its win, right? A show like that now may not get that second season, because they're like, it's not. We're not getting the right kind of metrics we're looking for here. It's not hitting the right kind of and we don't know any of that stuff. We can't see any of that stuff, but we could before look and say, hey, it was. But for the 18 and 24 crowd, it was huge, and then they couldn't ignore that. The studio had to face kind of public pressure to be like, we want more of these things, and we're showing you, right? And now they can just obfuscate a lot of that information and make decisions kind of unilaterally. That's kind of what's worrisome, I think. Okay, speaking of streaming services, there's a lot of news about streaming services.
Every time we do this podcast.
So CBS All Access, which we talked about, is being rebranded to Paramount Plus, right? There was a bunch of news out of the Viacom CBS Investor Day event. So they kind of did their own kind of Disney Plus, Disney Investor Day thing. Wasn't nearly as big. They kind of revealed the pricing structure for Paramount Plus and all that kind of stuff. But here's the kind of the takeaway. Paramount Plus will offer 36 new original shows in 2021, part of a backbone of 30,000 total hours, which is a very funny stat to use, of television derived from CBS, MTV, Showtime, BET, and other subsidiary networks. It'll also make available about 2,500 existing movies, well above those of competitors like HBO Max, which is very funny, which has about 1,300. Among the films in the catalog are The Godfather, Titanic, Sunset Boulevard, Pulp Fiction, Grease, Top Gun, and Love Story. I mean, that they cherry pick their best names here. Let's be honest. Things that are exciting for us, I think, maybe for you guys, but maybe for me for sure. They spent a good chunk talking about what they call the Star Trek universe, which includes a new show called Prodigy, which is actually aimed at children and will actually feature the return of Kate Mulgrew as Captain Janeway. So she's going to reprise her role in an animated show. And then they double down on the Strange New Worlds, which is a spin-off from Discovery, which features Captain Pike or follows Captain Pike with the Enterprise prior to Captain Kirk. And then more of Discovery and more Lower Decks. If you have been watching Star Trek over the last couple of years and been liking it, it's basically more of the same, and you should be excited about that. If you haven't liked it, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, they've really moved Star Trek to be more towards that JJ look and feel that came with the new JJ movies. They even say in this little video where they talk about how we've merged our universes, quote unquote, and brought the look and feel of the JJ stuff into the television series, right? A little upsetting, especially for people who wanted more of the traditional Star Trek, the stuff that's more like TNG, the stuff that's more like the original series. I don't think that's coming back, but also I don't know if there's a big demand for that necessarily either. It's fairly niche, I think, at this point. That being said, the Orville is basically that, and people really seem to like the Orville. Yeah. Hardcore Trekkies seem to like it. So apparently the show at one point, about halfway season through, the first season, Seth MacFarlane decided first of all, he wanted to make Star Trek, and he was turned down.
Yeah.
And then so he's decided he's going to make the Orville. He's going to do it himself. And he's going to do it as a comedy, and that's how he pitched the show, and that's how he got it off the ground. And then halfway through the first season, he was like, "You know what? No, I'm just going to do Star Trek."
He just turned it serious again?
And he just made it serious again, and it became much more like a very true to form and true to the classic Star Trek formula type show. There's still obviously comedy in it, and that there's funny characters and stuff like that. But he just really leaned into, we're just going to do Star Trek because no one's doing it like this.
Badass.
Yeah, and really no one else can do it he's kind of has the clout now to be able to do that kind of stuff. Jeremy, does I know you used to really like Star Trek. Does any of the new Star Trek stuff at all appeal to you?
Not at all.
Really? What could bring you back into the Star Trek universe? What would pull you in?
I don't know. What do you mean?
Well, what do you like about Star Trek that you feel like isn't speaking to you now?
For me, Star Trek is just tied to
Nostalgia.
The Next Generation and those specific actors and whatnot.
Right.
It's not necessarily the world and at large or whatever.
Sure. That's fair. Dan, what about you?
It's for me, it's the type of storytelling. I think that I get the impression from the new stuff, having not seen most of it, that it is much more of a season-long arc kind of style show.
True.
And I did like the procedural sort of style to Next Generation, and
Right.
some of those. I mean, they would have arcs over like maybe 3 episodes. That was probably the longest that there would be, and there would be some recurring characters and like overall.
It was really
arcs,
loose, yeah,
but very loose. And I like that it was almost like Alien Society of the Week. You go down
commentary on
some sort of human ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
Right. That's what worked for Star Wars for me, and it was always about inspiring
Trek.
imagination. Star Trek, God damn it.
Mhm.
Less so Star Wars. It was always about inspiring your imagination,
Right.
like putting yourself in their shoes. What would I do in this situation, or what would I think if I were encountering this type of species? So that's what I've been missing. I have been missing from the new stuff. Is that it seems more like the JJ stuff, which is a bit more action focused, and it's bright lights and flashy, lens flares, and that's it's not that there's no content or no substance to it, but it's less than of what I want.
I think it's different. I think modern. That's the thing. If really what you want is that classic stuff, I mean, I guess the Orville is really your only kind of outlet for a modern version of that. The modern version of Star Trek, they made a decision. It's gonna be much more that a modern television approach, right? They've decided to like grow up with how television's grown up, which I don't think I can fault them for that decision. I think might be even the right decision, like long term, right? Like I don't know, but I would say that season 2 and 3 of Discovery are quite good. There's really good moments in season 1 of Discovery as well. If you were at all a fan of Star Trek, I would give it a shot. And then if you really, really like the old stuff, the TNG stuff, and you're looking for something just quick and breezy, Lower Decks, which is the animated comedy series that's set in that time frame, very good.
It's cute. I watched a couple episodes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into it, I don't think, but
it's got the. I feel like it's got the right. It's kind of got that Rick and Morty-esque kind of wackiness because they have the ability to play in the Star Trek universe, but get to lean into that Star Trekkiness a little bit, which is fun. So more of that's all coming, and it's going to have a lot more money behind it with all of Paramount and Viacom. New movies will premiere on Paramount Plus after a 45-day theatrical window. This will begin with A Quiet Place Part 2 and the next Mission Impossible. This is, I think, the shortest theatrical window.
And they didn't mention like an additional charge to rent those or anything?
No, I don't believe so. So
that's cool.
This is just a continuing trend of that theatrical window shrinking over time. That all started with Trolls 2. It's funny, that'll go down. This all began with the Trolls 2 dilemma.
The Trolls incident, yeah.
Right? It'll be examined in film school for decades to come.
The email heard around the world.
Right, seriously. And then the other thing is Beavis and Butthead is going to get a feature film. Don't have a lot of attachment to this property. We've referenced it before, but I know it's popular. I don't know if there's really much to say about that. Any thoughts?
Beavis and Butthead has not been a part of my life for a while, and I don't think I'm missing out on anything by not having it. So like, I don't. I feel like that was. Maybe my sister, like 5 years older than us, that generation, even though we're same generation, it was more of their show than mine.
Yeah, I don't know. Beavis and Butthead. I remember when I did see it. I was probably too young for it, and it went over my head. But I never found it that funny, to be honest. And it feels like they've been out of the zeitgeist for too long now. Like, what are you trying to prove here?
Yeah, it's something we talk about all the time on this podcast. Like, we don't need to reboot every single thing from the 80s and 90s,
right. No,
and earlier even.
But since such is the nature of life, it seems like in Hollywood. Disney Plus in Europe, Canada, and New Zealand got Disney Star content added to their service for no extra fee, effectively bringing all the Hulu content from the States into the catalog internationally. Pretty exciting, actually.
Cha-ching.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
The Alien movies are in there. The Die Hard stuff is in there. Basically, this is their more mature content. A lot of it pulled from their Fox catalog, but not always necessarily. All of Buffy's in there. if you're interested in a rewatch, maybe give it some time. Let the whole Joss Whedon thing cool down a little bit before you do that. But it's some good content in there. It's kind of exciting to see. People in the States are a little annoyed that they didn't get to just have it thrown in for them. Yeah. Nickelodeon has announced the creation of a new spin-off studio called Avatar Studios.
Crazy.
It is being run by The Last Airbender and Korra creators and is dedicated to making animated series and movies set in the world of Avatar. Not the movie Avatar, just to be clear. The first official project will be an animated theatrical film. Note that the last wide release of anything in this property really was way back with the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and that was a major flop and a very bad film. So,
the show is actually pretty good. The show Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. I haven't seen all of Legend of Korra, but I've heard it's really good.
Yeah.
It has the same. It's similar to a similar story to Clone Wars. Actually, like the first half of the first season, it's like it's a little too juvenile. It's a little too cartoonish. But then the show really, really matures, and it's worth the wait.
I tried to watch I watched the first episode of the show of Last Airbender, and I was like,
yeah, it's tough. I'll be the first.
It was tough. So I'm going to try to give it another shot, especially because I hear Korra is really, really good as well. There's going to be familiar names associated with these projects. That the reason I really want to try to give it its fair shake is because there are names from the Clone Wars that come from this from Airbender, like Dave Filoni. He cut his teeth on The Last Airbender.
You'll see a lot of crossover, I think.
And I think I would like it. So I just need to give it another chance. What's crazy here is that Nickelodeon has decided to like double down on this, and a lot of the thinking behind it is that they recently made those shows available on Netflix. They licensed them out to Netflix,
right?
And that they've been doing huge numbers
probably
on the streamer. So this is, I guess, the kind of the flip side of that coin, where it's like, hey, you can put something on Netflix now, and if it does do well, regardless of whether or not we know how successful it is, it can create something like this. And if you're a fan of that property, I mean, that's got to be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with these algorithms is that, there is still a human element. You can control to a degree what you input into the algorithm, right? So I've done stupid things, and I don't know how much this actually, impacts things, but I've gone and liked movies on Netflix that I haven't watched, but I like that type of movie.
Right.
I want to encourage more of those movies in my feed, like more suggestions like that too.
Right. You're kind of gaming the algorithm.
Yeah. So I mean, that's how things are going to be decided in the future. I guess. And maybe quantity at a certain point that does become absolute quality, right? Karl Marx.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about this property to be able to say, man, this is dope. But I know enough of people behind the property to say this is dope. So I'm excited just for that reason, and I'm gonna make a dedicated effort to go back. There's two things I need to go back and watch. It's obviously Last Airbender and not Interstellar. And what am I thinking of? Sci-fi show. The one that you just finished that you just liked.
No, The Expanse.
The Expanse. Thank you. Yeah,
you all should watch The Expanse. That should be your number one priority.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they're like, they had a similar problem where they were struggling with trying to get into it, and they're like, how far do I need to get to like buy in? And they're like, season 2, episode 1, and that's what they said. It was like, no, don't skip to that. They said that's when, if you're not in by that point, you won't be in.
Yeah, you know what? That's actually probably fair. Anyways, we'll talk about The Expanse later.
Okay. Speaking of sci-fi, Battlestar Galactica's Ron Moore will be overseeing a Magic Kingdom cinematic universe for Disney+. Dan, I've looked to you because you're our biggest Disney, like traditional Disney fan, in terms of like the older stuff. This is going to be based around a lot of the parks, the theme parks. I've never been to any of the theme parks, but it's going to include obviously the classic films, right? But also some apparently there's storylines that are weaved into the actual parks themselves that are important. So I don't know. I've never been to them. I will fully admit this is not something I'm really up to speed with. But people who love those theme parks love this shit. So I think it's for them, and it's going to really tie into the theme park going experience.
That'd be interesting.
But I've never really.
I don't know anything about this, but what I would say, having been to Disney World Florida a couple times, they really do invest in the narrative of it, that Star Wars part of the park. You're completely in character. Everybody there is in character the entire time. So I love that commitment and the idea, and especially with the Star Wars one, because you're part of the story. That's them sort of dipping their toes.
Sure.
Maybe Magic Kingdom is providing that to kids who like the princesses side of things as well as the Star Wars side of things.
Right.
I think it's a great idea if that is in fact what they're doing.
I'm surprised. Well, I don't know. I'm surprised how optimistic you are here, to be honest, because the idea of a new cinematic universe is typically, from my experience, met with groans.
Yeah, I know, but this is just what's happening at this point.
Right.
It's not going to stop. We just have to get used to it. We have to acclimate at this point.
But what bugs me is when they try to force the universe, right? So we saw this with the Dark Universe. Remember when they tried to make like the Mummy and all that stuff, Dracula, and that completely backfired. Like they put the cart before the horse.
Right.
And what I think is like, go make a good show, and then if you can make spinoffs that are successful and people care about, then you can create a universe. I don't know if this idea of creating a Magic Kingdom cinematic universe, it just feels very manufactured to me. Just from,
No, but I mean, Disney, technically, if we're going to get into it, Disney's done that kind of stuff before. It's like they've had their characters all on a special together before. Disney's always brought like Aladdin has been in a room with Belle and the Little Mermaid, like they just...
even in Wreck-It Ralph too.
Disney's always capitalized on that kind of stuff, right? From a commercial standpoint. So I'm not at all surprised to see this. And then they have the characters to back this up. These are tried and true characters.
Yeah, and I know there was a show on like traditional like network television over that was very popular fairly recently. I think it went off the air a couple years ago. That had a similar premise where it would like bring these characters from these fairy tales into like the real world and stuff.
Or just look at like Kingdom Hearts, right?
Oh yeah, the joke about this was like they should just make a Kingdom Hearts show,
basically.
And that should be what it should be.
Yeah.
And that would be much more interesting to me because the introduction of the Final Fantasy element would be like very bold, I think, to present to a wide audience, because I think that's from outside looking in, a very impenetrable whatever's going on over there just seems very complicated, and I don't know if I can get into it. But if it was a movie or show that like presented to me in a very like straightforward way, that would be helpful. Okay. And then this is just a quick shoot side. But the rights to Punisher and Jessica Jones are back with Marvel Studios. This is kind of one of those confusing things because you're like, did they ever not have them? Yeah, I mean, they technically leased or however that works, the characters to Netflix for those shows, and then Marvel Television, which is a different studio, at Disney, was the ones who were actually creating it and producing it.
Yeah.
So this is now they've gone back to Marvel Studios. Which is what's run by Kevin Feige, right? But so did Daredevil a couple months ago and all this and stuff like so. Whatever, but
I mean, out of any of them, you're likely Daredevil's the one you're going to see first of any of those.
Yeah, and there's rumors that he might appear in Spider-Man 3. I don't know. That was coming around the same time that everyone was appearing in Spider-Man 3. So who knows what's real and what's not there. I feel like the Jessica Jones story is a little bit played out at this point. I think we've, in the sense that like I don't know how much more we need to tell. Like how many more stories we need to tell with Jessica Jones that are novel and new in the MCU.
She can still be part of the MCU.
Yeah, she can still be. But I'm like, I don't know if I need a new TV series or episode.
I would say that Jessica Jones fits into the MCU better than the Punisher does. I don't know what the Punisher is going to have to do with the MCU now, but
it'd be really hard to bring the Punisher to the MCU. I think they both fit in their own way. And I'm not saying I don't want more Jessica Jones. I'm just saying I don't necessarily need another season of Jessica Jones on television, because I like the character. And Punisher, like having John Bernthal.
Yep.
His performance is just so good as Punisher. Like it really feels like it would be a shame if we couldn't touch on that. It's just such a really hard to do in a PG-13 type of way. Like I don't know how you touch on vigilante gun violence in a thoughtful way in a Marvel movie. Like I don't know if I necessarily want Marvel doing that either at this point either. So it's like I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird spot for them to be in. But I mean, Deadpool is going to be R-rated, so there is precedent for them like opening up.
It's funny you should say that, because in a recent interview with Kevin Feige at the TCAs, he talked about how they have no further plans for R-rated content outside of Deadpool 3.
Well,
and so people are saying that like they're like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Feige's notorious for saying one thing and doing something else, but people are like, oh, what does that mean for Blade? Blade is still we just talked about them hiring a writer. We're so far away from any decisions being made there about what the content of that movie is actually going to be, and how it's presented, whether PG-13 or R. I think most superhero stories can be told in PG-13, like 99% of them, I think. There's characters obviously on the outskirts like Punisher where I think it's really hard to not do an R-rated version of that character. I just don't know
definitely.
what value there is. You dilute the character by not presenting it in extreme violence.
Right.
Jeremy, what do you think about this? Did we lose Jeremy?
Uh-oh.
Hello? No, he's still here. Maybe he went to the bathroom. Okay, so a couple of things I want to touch on before we wrap up then. Just quick little bits here. Superman the Animated Series will be released on HBO Max on March 17th, one day before the Snyder Cut.
There was a moratorium. I'm not supposed to mention it.
Well, I don't know, but I wrote that before you told me that. One day before the Snyder Cut for the first time in HD. So that's exciting. Although no news about Superman the Animated Series coming to Blu-ray like its cousins, Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond, which are both now out on 4K Blu-ray. So people might be disappointed that it's not coming out in 4K. I don't know. Oh, Jeremy's back. Jeremy's back. Hello. Were you there the whole time? Uh-oh. Okay, well, I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep moving. We have a date for the Clone Wars sequel, The Bad Batch. It will be coming out on guess which day?
Of course.
On May the 4th, which is Star Wars Day. I like when they give some content on those because they're kind of made up. Like it's like it just happens to sound like
you gotta pick a date.
May the Force be with you.
You
so
might
it's
as
like
well pick that day, yeah.
well, it's like the Mass Effect one. Mass Effect has an N7 day, right? So it's like it's kind of silly, but because it's been embraced by the studio, like the people who actually make it, they're like, okay, cool. They always release something on that day. I like that here too. It's like you don't have to give us everything on Star Wars Day, but yeah, drop us a bone, you know. So I'm excited for this. It looks pretty dark in terms of their Star Wars animated stuff, so we'll see. It is essentially a sequel to Clone Wars and take place after Revenge of the Sith, so not something we've really seen a lot of. Speaking of dates, the Loki series has a date. It's coming on June 11th. Paddington 3 is in the works, guys. I don't know if you're excited about that.
That's worth mentioning.
Yeah, it is because I mentioned. The only reason I mentioned it here is because I watched Paddington 1 and 2, and I said on the show that I really liked them. So 3 is in the works. That's exciting. Daft Punk has split up. I mentioned this at the top of the show as a joke, but for me, this leaves a gaping hole where the soundtrack to Tron 3, should be. And my vote to replace them would be Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. If they had to pick someone to do the soundtrack, that's who I want. And then lastly, there was a trailer for the film Cruella, and I only really want to mention this because I think this is a baffling decision, in my opinion. I think Disney, in my mind, has completely misread the room if they think that we want a movie about a dog murderer who has very few redeeming qualities, if any at all, and then present the movie
like she's some sort of misunderstood.
Like she's exactly, but then also have her talk about how she's born bad and like all this kind of stuff, and like what value do we get out of a Cruella movie?
What this is, and what I got from the trailer, anyways, personal opinion. I shouldn't say what this is. What it looks like is people at Disney were sitting around and they said, we need our own version of the Joker. What's a Disney character that we can use?
Really? You think that's you think this is from the Joker?
I promise you, watch the trailer again. The way that she's even the way that it's shot, her makeup running, it looks very much like a clown face. Her struggling with some form of depression, like some form of mental instability.
Even more forced to me than God.
That's absolutely what it looks like to me. I agree with you entirely. Cruella de Vil is a character that should be unredemptive and shouldn't be explored in this fashion. To me,
no. I understand like this is kind of comes off the coattails of what they did with like Angelina Jolie's Maleficent, but that we didn't know anything about that character. She poisoned Sleeping Beauty. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
She poisoned Sleeping Beauty. That's really all we knew about that character. Do we know much more? She was jealous of her beauty. She was
jealous of her beauty,
right?
But we know plenty about the character.
But she didn't murder. Yeah, but like she's like there was just not a lot there, and then Cruella is more defined as a character and is even worse.
Well, the thing with Maleficent is trying to present her as this misunderstood sort of like force of nature that like if people were to leave her alone, she would leave them alone, sort of thing. Right. I don't see that for Cruella, so I don't know what the arc for the character is going to be. But
how can you present that if she tries to come into these people's lives and steal their puppies to make a coat? But hey, if you stay out of her life, she'll stay out of yours or something. Yeah. Whatever. I don't know. This is like for me, it's one of those kind of like maybe a bridge too far with the Disney live action stuff. It's like, guys, we get it, but you don't have to. I don't feel like we're even that far. Like, do we need to scrape the bottom of the barrel already?
Well, it's weird. I mean, I guess we shouldn't spend too much time on this, but it does bug me because this is not presented as a kids movie either.
No.
This is a movie that's made for people our age, mid 20s to late 40s or whatever, right? Like,
right.
It's made for adults, and it's deliberately ironic. It's commenting on a character that we're already familiar with, but it's like to me, these Disney creations should be first and foremost kids' stories.
Right. Otherwise, what's the point?
I don't know that there's anybody. Maybe there are. Maybe I'm out of touch. But I don't know that there's anybody our age that's like really into Cruella de Vil.
No,
you know, like
because if you're into 101 Dalmatians, it's the dogs that you're into.
Yeah, you're into Pongo and Perdita all day. Pongo and Perdita are the parents. They're not who you're into.
Yeah, okay.
the doggy parents.
Okay, fair enough. And then, by the way, they even put Dalmatians into this trailer. I feel like that's
and
like
growl at her. Yeah.
I think that's like. And then, by the way, we watched this trailer right after we watched the Mortal Kombat trailer, and Mortal Kombat ends with the "I am Sub-Zero" line, and which is funny in and of itself, but like fits the jokey tone, that more cheesy tone. And then this trailer ends with "I am Cruella." That's like the final line, which doesn't even really make any sense.
Yeah, because in world, it's not like the people in that office are gonna be like, oh.
yeah, that's your name. We've been calling you that the whole time.
It's an origin story. Of course, she's Cruella. That's all she is.
Anyway, so that's Cruella. We don't have time to discuss what we've been watching in depth. WandaVision will be wrapping up next week with its final episode, so we'll do a spoiler discussion on that. I have watched Bart and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. I've been singing this movie's praises. Very funny Kristen Wiig movie.
Agreed. I watched it.
You watched it?
It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's great.
I also watched in a stark contrast to that movie, I watched The Dig on Netflix, which is that movie about those old stodgy British people unearthing a Viking ship or something like that.
Pretty cool.
It's actually not Viking. It's not Viking. It's older. That's they say that a couple times in the movie. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good movie. It's very slow. Nothing really happens necessarily.
Nice.
But it's just nice hanging out with these people. That's really all it is. It feels a little bit like an Oscar baity kind of movie. It makes you feel good about like things that people did in the past, like real people. So I don't know if you have nothing else to watch, and you want something that's like new. Watch The Dig.
Oh god.
Okay.
This is the world we live in.
I also watched Mulan recently, the movie from last year. It is very bad, like very bad. And I thought it was like, I'll give it a shot. It's very pretty, but I've never been more bored in my life. Imagine going into a movie called Mulan, having seen the animated movie, and then you haven't seen it, I presume, Dan.
Not the new one, no.
But it is not good. It's just so bland in so many ways, which is such a shame, I feel like, for that property. So I don't recommend watching Mulan.
I don't know what you expected.
It is part of the reason I get mad about the Cruellas of the world is when you have like you're gonna take these like really the original Mulan is a good movie, and they made a modern bad version of it. It's like, why? What's the point? I don't know. Anyway, and then I also finished watching The Great on Amazon Prime. The way I described it in shorthand was a combination of Downton Abbey and Fargo, and I stand by that. I think if that sounds interesting to you, you will love this show. It's very, very good. So, Dan, have you watched anything else lately?
Just Bart and Star. I'll echo your thoughts on Bart and Star there. That movie is absolutely hilarious. Kristen Wiig is delightful, of course. It's ridiculous. It's over the top, but in a fun way. And it's just if you want a nice, light, new kind of refreshing comedy.
It apes a lot of the feelings of for me of like the Austin Powers movies in the sense that like it's just so wacky and like there doesn't seem to be any necessarily internal consistency that is important, but that's okay.
It's your classic buddy comedy, but it's just a twist. It's not unconventional because it's women. You haven't traditionally seen that as often in other comedies. So it's that, but yeah, it's very much like a Harold and Kumar feel with just women in their mid-30s instead.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious.
No, you're right. Harold and Kumar is a really good reference for that too as well because of some of the really weird shit that happens in it. Yeah. Anyway, so that's this week's episode. This is episode 162. It's hard to imagine we've done this many. We don't know what happened to Jeremy. We hope he's okay. Yeah. Like we said, we've been having some technical difficulties lately. So hopefully we can get that sorted out for next time. I might just have to buy a new computer. That might be the simplest solution to this. Anyway, you can find our review of on the Film Club of the Royal Tenenbaums at our Patreon, patreon.com/TowerBabblecast. That's available now. as well as all of our previous Film Club episodes are available there as well. You can subscribe for as little as $5 a month and get access to the Discord, where we have our friends of the show, Marcos and Sean Tennyson, who both were kind enough to join us as we recorded live today. They're both in the Discord, where we discuss a lot of these things, when we're not talking about them on the actual show. So if you want to join that community, we would love to have you there. And again, you can get through to that via our Patreon. Please follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, now that it's unblocked. Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and head over to our website, towerbabble.ca, to find everything we do. And we will be back next week. Well, wait, no, probably back in 2 weeks. We've been doing bi-weekly episodes. We'll be back very soon with more Tower Babble. We'll talk to you then.
See you guys.